Hello. That was interesting. I think maybe what I'm going to talk about might address a few of the questions, explore a little bit more what was coming up there. So that works quite well. Right. Thank you for coming. I am James Smith. You can get me on Twitter at Floppy, which is unique, if not distinguished. And I am a technologist. I'm an engineer. I've been a software engineer for my entire career, and I work with technology, and I, like to spend my time making the world a better place with technology. What I've done for many years in things like climate change and so on and so forth. But at the moment, I'm playing around a lot with democracy, and I've been an open source developer for a long time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what can democracy learn from open source. Quick poll, who's familiar with the ideas of open source and the open source movement? Okay, good. Right, I'll sort of pull those out. Shouldn't be leaving people in the dark. So, I love open source. I love it. It's great. I love working in open source. I love openness generally in all its forms. Open source, for those of you who don't know, is a way of building software, particularly, but it can be applied to other things. That means that not just is the software free to use, but it's also free in the sense of freedom for anybody to get involved, to change, to collaborate, to influence. And it means that I can get hold of the code for a bit of software, and I can make an improvement, and we can, people can work together to build these things very well. And it also covers open standards and things like that. And most of the world now relies on this stuff. The web is running on open standards and open source. It's really important. It's how we've built that thing. You can think of it as things like Wikipedia as well. Wikipedia is an open project where anybody can contribute, of course. And it's the sum total of human knowledge in our phone, in our pockets. It's we've got superpowers now. And there are other aspects of it as well. Having the source open means that many eyes make all bugs shallow. Terrifying image with eyes. But the more people look at something, the more you can find problems and get rid of them. And on top of that, as an engineer, there's a site and tool for open source collaboration called GitHub, and I absolutely love GitHub. I love the way that the collaboration tool works. It's changed the way I do my job. It's changed my career. And it's made our industry so much more efficient. It's amazing. So, I love all of that. Politics is really hard. Politics is complicated, and democracy is difficult. But over the last 3 years or so, I've been exploring some ways with a particular project that we can start to influence, start to use some of the ideas that I love so much from open source and use them in the democratic realm. And there are lots of lessons that can be taken from open source and agile development and things like that and applied to democracy. So I'm going to kind of pull some of those out. So first, start small, right? Start with the first bit of code. Back in 2013, I wrote a blog post in which I got sick of just being angry about things on Twitter, along with lots of other people, and thought, well, why don't we just start writing them down? Write down what we think. We can do that. We have the tools. It's amazing. A couple of weeks later, we started this collaborative project to start writing down ideas about, the things that we thought should be done differently. And we ended up starting to write a manifesto. And that built over the next little while. We started really, really small. We started with, God, I can't remember what the first thing was, but there was just like one thing. It was probably something about it was probably something about climate change. And so we started. We started just with one sentence and built from there. Everything has been an iteration from there. And this is the thing. This is the Open Politics Manifesto. You can find it at openpolitics.org.uk or follow updates from it at openpoliticsuk on Twitter. And this is all built up from that first sentence, bit by bit. So what we've tried to do here is very indicative of the next lesson, which is to lower barriers to entry. Nowadays with open source, I can get involved in a project like that. I don't have to know the people who are making it. I don't have to prove myself a certain amount before I can put my ideas in. I can just get involved. And that's exactly what we do in this situation. Up in the top corner of every page on this manifesto, there's a button that says Suggest a Change. And in a similar way to Wikipedia, you can hit the button, go through to an editor, whoever you are, absolutely anybody, you can all do it right now. All you need is an internet connection and an account on GitHub, though it walks you through creating that. And you can start changing it. You can change it to do exactly what you think it should be. And every single bit of this is built up through this process. Once you've done that, it invites you to say, okay, what was it you changed? Quick summary, and a little bit of detail about why, or references, or things like that. And then off it goes. And your job as a contributor is done. Almost. But we try and make this as easy as possible for people. There's no barrier to contributing to policy. And then we have an open review process, which again, coming from open source, the idea of people submitting their changes and everybody looking at them and weighing them up. That's exactly what we do. So those submissions go into a queue. This is one of them. This is using the GitHub interface here. And we can see what people have done. I've written a thing about outlawing killer robots, which is not as fantastical as it seems by any means. It seems to be in the news every day. And then we discuss, and that's the sort of the open process. And the nice thing about the open process is you can see exactly what people have changed. So you can see actually what I've written is this bit down here. That's changed just because of a line ending, but that's what's been written. You can see very easily. I'd love to be able to see this for the laws being made, for bills, for amendments. This kind of view would be fantastic. Practically impossible, but it would be amazing. And then we vote. So we vote in that same interface. It's a very simple voting system. People agree, they abstain, or they can block. We have a particular voting system that's built for sort of the kind of long tail type participation. You only need a few people to agree in order to have something go in, as long as nobody blocks it. If somebody abstains, you need a few more people. So you've got to have a kind of a bit of a critical mass, but everyone has a veto with a block. And generally speaking, that works. The nice thing is that the voting system itself is part of the manifesto system. So you can change the voting system in exactly the same way as you would change any of the rest of it. The way we decide who gets to vote is, again, taken from open source. In open source, you'll have a set of existing project maintainers who understand what the bit of software is about, where it's going, have a bit of an idea of the direction, and who get to guide that on an ongoing basis. In open source, it's often a very small pool that doesn't really change. We have a rule whereby as soon as you have made a submission and had it accepted, you can vote. So all of these 40 people at the top can vote. Some of them have probably only made one sentence change. Some of them maybe even just fixed a typo. But they contributed, so they get to vote. We've got other people who have been involved but who don't. So that's the sort of the simple rule. And then the voting is really, really simple. We're a very small project, so the numbers aren't big. But the way we're doing it is, if anybody blocks it, it'll fail. So there's that sort of safety net. We prefer to reject rather than accept, I suppose. But if the number of people who agree minus the number that abstain is more than 2 at the minute, like I say, very low, and it's more than a week old and less than 3 months, then in it goes. And we do it that way, like I say, because of the sort of long tail participation model. So most of those 40 contributors are somewhere along here. A few of us are right up the end where we've made lots and lots of contributions. We're very active. I'm the one who's made most. There are a few more who've done less, and then there are some people down here who've just done one thing and we've never seen them again. And that's fine. That's very similar to the kind of, it's the normal sort of interaction mode you get online. A few people are very active. It's the same as Wikipedia edits and things like that. So we have the voting system designed to work with that. I say designed, evolved, I guess. Made up, some might say. So that's what we're working with. We're building all this on top of standard tools, on top of free tools that are available to anyone. And there's some really nice things that we get with those. We get version control. So I can go back to any version of the manifesto at any point in time and see what was there, what changes were made, and so on. We can roll back very, very easily. And we can see who made what change. We can actually look at the file in a particular view and look at exactly who made what change and when. And that will link through to the discussion that was around it and so on. Again, another thing I would love to have is this four-party manifesto. So where the hell did that idea come from? What was the discussion that went on around it? That'd be great. Automation. It's another great idea from open source. Do things automatically. We count the votes up automatically. It's not done by hand. We have a little robot that counts them up and marks them as whether they've been accepted, whether they've died, whether they're still waiting, and so on, and we feed that back into the system to say, yes, okay, this is ready to go, or it's still waiting for this. At the moment, a nice person still has to press that button to merge the thing in. We want to get rid of that, so that actually I have no different power from anybody else in the thing. At the moment, I press the button. But we want to get away from that. But the really key thing is that anyone can help. Right? We have all of those contributors. I don't know where some of those are from. There are lots of people there I don't know. There are some people who have made an account on GitHub to do one change and nothing else. They've never used it for anything else. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they're from. All I know is that their idea was accepted. And that's fine. It doesn't matter. You could be on the other side of the world. There are good ideas all over the place. Another key idea from open source. A friend of mine once spent the weekend working on a bit of software with somebody in Brazil that he never met. And by the end of it, they'd made something great. That's magic. And we can do the same thing. We also use things like continuous delivery, which is another nice idea from agile development. We're always getting the thing that you're building out there into public. This is a living document, even during election season, things like that. This is always evolving and always changing. It's always being updated. There is no fixed thing, though you can go back and see what it was at any point in time, of course. And doing this stuff in small iterations, we like to have small changes. We don't want big, complex policies. We want little things, little ideas that we can then take and improve and build and adapt and improve upon, because they're much easier to merge in. We say to people, you don't have to have a final proposal. Just give us the core of your idea, and then we'll build on it. And another thing from Agile is some minimum viable product, which is the thing that you use to test your assumptions, to get the stuff that you've done out there in front of people and say, does that make any sense? I've assumed this, is that right? And you want to prove yourself wrong. And so when we had, after a year or so of this, like I said, it's been going 3 years, after a year or so of this, we had a whole bunch of policy across all these different areas. So we decided to put it out in front of people. And I stood for election in the 2015 general election on that platform, on that open source platform that anybody could change. We had 2 candidates. I stood in Horsham, down in Sussex. Our other candidate stood in southwest Surrey. Both extremely safe Conservative seats, and mild spoiler, we didn't win. But we did do, for our first time out, I was very happy with how we did. Didn't get much positives back either, but again, that was never really likely to happen. What was really interesting is the way people reacted to this. They didn't, I thought we would go and talking about policies, about what we said, how we said the world should be. What people really reacted to well was the way that we did it. The way that we did it in the open. We changed the way they interacted with democracy. And so that's what we led with, this idea of democracy for the 21st century. I have all these leaflets with my face on. Nobody should have that many copies of their own face. It's weird. 50,000. We formed a party. And again, an idea from open source. The manifesto is independent. It's your open source project that anybody can run, if you like. But we formed a party that was like the delivery arm, if you like. You could vote for that if you wanted to, or you could do it yourself. You can run your own, or whatever. So we formed a party called Something New. You can find us online, somethingnew.org.uk, or on Twitter at Have Some New. And we are adopting that and promoting that as as putting candidates up for election on that manifesto, on that way of thinking about things. And this has led us into thinking much more about open democracy and the future of democracy. We hear a lot about digital democracy. Digital democracy is not just the 18th century system that we have on the smartphone, right? It's not the same. We're moving through different forms of society. We start in sort of tribes and things like that, sort of tightly connected but very small. Then you get up to tightly connected large organisations like armies and churches and things like that, and society sort of moves through these phases, then through to competition, large-scale competitive markets. And then moving onwards towards multi-organisational connected networks. So you have large scale and you have but tight connections between things. This is not mine, this is by a guy called David Rumfeld. And as we're becoming a planetary scale society, right? We are not a collection of individual countries, we are operating at a planetary scale. We have planetary scale problems that we need to deal with. Climate change, which I think of as often one of the most important things that we need to deal with, is actually we're nowhere near as screwed on that as we are on nitrogen and phosphorus. So there are things that are really going to come and bite us, and we have to start thinking at that level. And for me, democracy is the way that we think together as a society. That's what government does. Government and democracy and politics are the way that we operate together. If you don't have them, you don't have some way of working together, we're just all, we're all just individually wandering around looking after ourselves, and that hasn't got us really to the best place. It's got us here. So, we've got planetary scale problems. And we're still trying to solve those planetary scale problems using the, God, that photo doesn't blow up very well, using the methods of the Industrial Revolution, right? We're using the politics and the institutions of the Industrial Revolution rather than the politics and the institutions that will grow out of the network. The way the network will grow is different. We're not building just a new broadcast media or something like that. We're building a new planetary nervous system, and it will give us new ways to work together to solve those problems. And that's why I believe that open and openness is not just about building better tools for the same choices. It's about providing new choices that think in a different way, that think that working openly and collaboratively together is the best way for us to operate as a society. And I think that open is a political statement. It's a statement that says we can work collaboratively at a global scale for the whole species, but in a distributed way, without this sort of centralisation. It's something we can only do now because of that ubiquitous access to technology. It's about everyone being able to come together and form something greater than the sum of the parts. Nice reference, thank you. Not all my audiences get that. And I think that needs new choices as well. It needs new choices to present those new options. If you were running a startup with a new idea, or rather, sorry, if you had a new idea for a new bit of technology or a new product, you wouldn't take it into IBM and expect to change them from the inside. You build it outside and you disrupt the market that way. It's the same with new political choices, and with our technological revolution will come a social one and a democratic one. It has to, because if it still works the same way in 50 years, we're going to be stuffed. In terms of practically, we are doing this, at the moment it's all voluntary, we're very small. We need help. If anybody thinks that's cool, please talk to me and get involved. We need people that can do everything because we don't have many people yet. But we're trying to do what we can and explore those ideas, really, and slowly build something new. Thank you. Thank you.
We've got time for a few quick questions. That was so interesting that you managed to answer most of the questions en route. I was going to say, now you have met the Linus Torvalds of democracy, but then the question is, are you the Linus Torvalds? Do you have the ultimate say? Or do the other heavy contributors have the ability to veto things in the same way that Linus Torvalds, the inventor and main
That's exactly why I made a benevolent dictator point. At the moment, it's not just me who's an admin, there are others. But that's why we want to get the fully automated thing working, so that I don't do that. I don't. There are things that I've wanted to get in that I haven't got in. There are things that I don't agree with that have got in. That, at the moment, sadly, is down to my own, what's the word, self-control.
Well, self-control is good.
But we'd much rather have it as an automated system so that I don't have any extra power over anybody else.
So we are actually quite tight on time. There's a million hands up, which means you're a very popular man.
I'm happy to.
We can talk outside. Maybe I'll just ask one more. Why are you not doing this internationally? You should see my calendar. Because I have a full-time job and 2 small children, and I'm trying to grow a small movement. We would love to. There are other interesting parties doing things elsewhere in the world. We're not the only people exploring this kind of idea. There's a party called Flux in Australia. Podemos have got some aspects of this. Partido de la Red in Argentina. It's growing and it's bubbling up all over the world. I was talking to somebody the other day who might do it in France, which would be fun. But yeah, we're experimental and we're hacking around with democracy, and if other people want to get involved and do it, then brilliant.
But the question was something, because I discussion, the question was why restrict democracy to one country?
Oh, well, because at the moment that's where we are.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's no reason why that manifesto has to apply to a particular country.
So Didier's going back to Belgium to implement something new in Belgium.
Sounds good.
All right.
I think it's a matter of starting from where you are. So at the moment we have, that's why we're a party. I don't think that in the future we should need to have parties. We're a party that doesn't really want to exist.
Because that was another question. The question that came in quite highly voted is, surely everybody else can just copy your system from GitHub.
Yeah.
Why do you need a party like you? Why do you...
So at the moment, brand, visibility, being able to carry on a message. If you stand as an independent, for instance, which I considered doing at the beginning, your brand recognition is basically your name, and my name is James Smith. Not great.
James something new Smith.
If I get tired, other people need to carry on. So at the moment we have a system where we do need parties, particularly in the UK, because the whole system is so broken. So yeah, start from where you are, and as somebody else said, if we were doing this, I wouldn't start from here, but we are.
So that was fascinating. There are lots of other fascinating speakers we need to fit in as well. So let's give James a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.